Hello, everyone. Happy Labor Day weekend. Hopefully you're doing something special with your family. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys have tomorrow off, but it's good to be back with you. I'm just going to take some time out, go over the second part of inflation, and maybe provide a little bit more insight and a little bit more information than I provided the first time to bring a better understanding to inflation and what it means. I might break this up into, this is the second part. I may do two more parts and try to make the video shorter. So I may do a part 3 and a part 4. So we're going to give that a shot. But happy Labor Day weekend. And I hope you guys have tomorrow off. So we're going to talk about inflation. We're going to get into the second part of it. I just wanted to delve a little bit deeper into some aspects of inflation and maybe talk about some remedy tonight. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that the third part, but just to give you an idea of what works and what may not work. So we'll talk about that too tonight. So the first thing I want to talk about is inflation. I told you, as far as my definition of inflation, a good definition is too much money chasing too fewer goods. But I want to get a little bit deeper into that because that's just a form of inflation. So with that aspect of it, too much money chasing too fewer goods, there's a form of demand pull inflation. So you have three parts of inflation. You have demand pull, you have cost push, and then you have built-in inflation. So built-in, well, let's start with demand pull inflation. So demand pull inflation is basically where there's too much demand, but there's not enough supply economically to support that demand. So if you have too much demand, but there's not enough supply economically to support it, then we call that demand pull inflation. Then you have cost push inflation. Cost push inflation basically happens when there's a rise in the production cost. So let's say the rise in raw material or the rise in wages, then that's going to fizzle over into the consumer price. So then there's going to be an increase in consumer price. So we call that cost push inflation. Then we have built-in inflation. Built-in inflation basically is, okay, we have the inflation built in for the future. We know it's coming down the road. We know there's more inflation to come. And so we're going to build that in. Let's say we have people asking for more wages. Well, I need more of a salary because we have to plan for inflation. Well, we call that built-in inflation. Another part of inflation, which is not talked about enough, is the constant printing of money. Now, I talk about this all the time, the constant printing of money. That is another form of inflation, putting more supply of money into the system that doesn't need to be there, especially when the demand is not there. There used to be a high demand for the dollar, and I do think it's still in high demand. Don't get me wrong. I do think that people still want the dollar, but I don't think it's still in high demand like it used to be. Or for instance, like with the Swiss franc, like I talked about last video, the Swiss franc stays in high demand. So by being in high demand, they have to keep printing to keep up with the demand. They have to keep printing and make sure they have enough supply to meet the demand. And so in their situation where their currency is in high demand in the Swiss franc and it's highly reputable, then they have to have that aspect of printing and supplying in order to keep up with the demand. But we are at a point right now, I think from the US standpoint, where our dollar is not as in high demand as it used to be. And so I believe, and then two, we have the ability to print money. So I think we end up printing sometimes too much to get us out of economic downturns or economic situations. For instance, 2008 financial crisis, quantitative easing, which is a way of printing money to get us out. As we continually print money and print money and print money and overprint, our money loses value over time. And that's one thing I'm going to get into too. What way do we remedy inflation? We'll talk about that, but keep that in mind. So those are the types of inflation. Well, let's talk about price fixing. Price fixing has been attempted many times in history and it never works. It's just something that never works, especially in a free market economy like we are. We are a free market capitalistic economy. And price fixing doesn't work for us because it's an artificial way to fix pricing. That doesn't work for us. Maybe an artificial way to fix the economy may work for a socialistic economy or a communist economy. Maybe it'll work for those particular economies, but for ours as a free market economy, that moves by what is called the Adam Smith theory, where if you leave the economy to itself, if there are any downturns or any problems, then it will automatically correct itself over time. Then if you do that without a lot of government intervention, then in a free market economy, it should correct itself. But when you go in and try to artificially fix the price, it's an artificial way of doing it. And those artificial ways and tricks of fixing price that never works. It didn't work in Venezuela when they had their economic downturn and hyperinflation. It didn't work in Turkey when they had their hyperinflation. It didn't work in Russia when they had their hyperinflation. And it didn't work in the United States when they had their hyperinflation during Nixon, when he stopped the gold standard in 1971. And when he came off of the gold standard, we had a hyperinflation, or should I say I don't think it was hyperinflation, not like the Weimar Republic, but we had an inflation issue where we're in double figures because of us stopping the gold standard. And Nixon attempted to freeze wages and other things for 90 days. And that did not work, to say the least. So it caused shortages, and that's a thing that can happen when you try to price fix. Shortages, think of it this way. So in the 70s, you had cars lined up at the gas station because of shortages of fuel, shortages of gas, or when the grocery store shelves are empty. Let's say in Russia's economic calamity, when they had hyperinflation and the grocery store shelves stayed empty, well, they had shortages, and that could happen for a number of different reasons. And that's part of the supply chain makeup, guys. It all goes hand in hand. When you have a situation where you have the price fixing, and so you have to charge a certain amount, then you're affecting the bottom line of the people producing too, as well. The people that are in agriculture, the people that are drilling for the oil, the people that are whatever the case may be. When you're affecting the producer, then you want to cause a shortage because they may not be able to come to you. They may go to the highest bidder or something else because you're affecting their bottom line, and it can cause shortages. So price fixing never works. Well, I want to talk about kind of the ascent of Vladimir Putin. The reason I wanted to bring him into the equation is because a lot of people don't know that the reason Vladimir Putin came into power is because of Russia's hyperinflation, because of their economic downturn. During the late 80s, going into the early 90s, Russia had a hyperinflation issue that they could not get under control, should I say. So it started from Mikhail Gorbachev, and it went into Boris Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin kind of extended the problem, and I think it got worse. So during that time, Russia had serious hyperinflation. They had serious economic issues. Grocery store shelves were empty. They had, I think, some economic uprising, or should I say domestic uprising, which a lot of times that comes along with it. I told you about that in Ray Dalio's book, The Changing World Order. Normally there's some type of domestic uprising that comes along with that. Think about it. It could be a battle for resources. Our money's not worth what it used to be. So there is a survival mode that happens, or a tendency within people, and that could cause all types of problems from an uprising and revolutionary standpoint. So during that time when Boris Yeltsin was in charge, Russia was going through hyperinflation. They had an economic downturn that opened the way for Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin came in, and he established a 13% flat rate tax in Russia. And by doing that, that kind of got Russia's economy back intact somewhat. It's still not where it should be. I guess it's good enough for them, but he got it back in good standing. And so Boris Yeltsin was never looked at after the same after that. And so Vladimir Putin's still in power. So that's what brought Vladimir Putin to power. And kind of the similar thing happened in Germany. The reason why Hitler got into power is because during the Weimar Republic, they had the hyperinflation, they had economic downturn, battle for supply, resources, domestic uprising, because what ended up happening is it was all blamed on Jewish bankers. So what happened during the Weimar Republic and during their hyperinflation, where their money became worth nothing, When Germany was struggling economically, it was all blamed on Jewish bankers. So, of course, that fizzled over into the Jews, where that caused discrimination. And so all the Jewish businesses were either broken into, torn down, the owners of the businesses dragged out. All the discrimination came against the Jews. And of course, that led into the Holocaust. And then that led into dictatorship with Adolf Hitler. So as you see where I'm going with this, guys, what can happen if you get into a hyperinflationary issue if you don't get it under control? The United States is not there yet. I don't think we're at that point. But if you don't get things under control and you continue to let things linger, you continue to print yourself into oblivion and try to print yourself out of a situation without getting the value of your currency under control, then it could lead to worse things. And the ultimate thing that you don't want to happen is some type of revolutionary uprising, something that leads to a war, and then a total economic restructuring from the bottom up. That would be a problem. And so we don't want that to happen. So we need to get this inflation under control. Well, what would be a remedy? One thing I think that would be a remedy that I think we need to go back to and that we need to look at is backing our money by gold or backing our money by silver. We need to back it by something that's tangible and that's valuable. And the reason I bring those two things up, because we still haven't dealt with the issue. We may try to price fix, which I showed you over history that's never worked. We may try to go in and adjust interest rates, which may work for a while. We may go in and try to do some quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, trying all these different things to make sure that things stay under control with our monetary system and with our economics. And that will work for a while, but we still hadn't dealt with the problem of the value of our money. And that is the main problem. And I think the only way you can fix that, or the best way to fix it, is by backing that currency with something tangible, like gold. That was when we were at our best. When our currency was backed by something for 180 years, that is what put us at the pinnacle of economic power. That's what had us in the play. We're still there, actually. But by there being an exodus away from the dollar to the BRICS system, and they're starting their own economy, and I'll get into that next video a little bit more. But by there being a migration away from the dollar, that's a little bit of a dynamic than we've had previously, as far as in dealing with inflation and dealing with economic problems. So we have to have our money backed by something tangible, I believe. As in, China continues to buy up a lot of gold in Africa. And I believe they're doing it to back up the yuan, their digital yuan. I believe they want to back that by gold, in my opinion, to establish that as the reserve currency for the BRICS system. I think we need to do the same thing. And what I found out, and I don't think I said this last video, I said China is buying up all the gold and there may not be any left. That's not true. So the United States, for as gold is concerned, we still have the most gold out of any country. And I believe it's to the tune of 8,133 tons. So in knowing that, we have what it takes in order to back our money by gold again. And it wouldn't take long to do. With the advent of our technology, with the advent of social media, with the advent of how quickly information changes hands now, with the advent of putting all these minds together quickly, I think we can do it, have it done fast, and have it done within a year or two to where our currency is back by gold again. And I think that would put us in a good standing. And that's just something to think about. But I think once we do that, I think we'll be back in good shape. If they'll ever do that again, I don't know. But I think one thing you have to think about is this. You wouldn't have to back it by tangible gold for the sake of, like, I'm going to turn in this money to receive a bar of gold, to receive an ounce or a gram of gold. So I'm going to exchange this bill for it. We can't do that anymore. I believe you used to be able to do it. And I think there was some criteria to that, where you can actually exchange your notes for gold. We don't have to do it that way now. I think if you just peg it to the price of gold and have an intricate mathematical way of doing that, to those who are esteemed in establishing algorithms and some type of mathematical equation to make sure things stay in order for us pricing. And if something gets out of line, that we be able to go in and rectify quickly, I think that'd be a good idea. So just ask the BRICS, currency that's been established on the blockchain and with blockchain technology. Like, for instance, one way that they can work with the value of their money in blockchain and cryptocurrency is for its tokenization. One way that the owners or the programmers or the people who actually put that particular token out, one way they actually keep that token's value up or make the value of the token go up if it's dropping too much is they burn tokens. They burn it. So they burn a supply. So they do it from a digital standpoint to where they burn a supply of a particular token. And ideally that drives the value up. That's just an idea. So if we establish something like that over here and we do it from a digital footprint, maybe that's something that we could look at doing that can get us back in good standings where we're not dealing with these inflationary issues. So that's one thing to think about. Have our money backed by something like gold again. You can do certain things like stop the government spending, stop the constant printing of money. You can do all those different things. But I think if you don't tap into the root cause as far as getting our value of our currency back to where it needs to be, I think it's null and void. And I think you will still be back at some of these issues if you don't do that. So that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. So it's been great talking to you guys. Next video, we'll get more deeply into the BRICS, maybe more deeply into the Russia-China relationship and how that ties into everything. And maybe that may be the last video on inflation, or I may do another one. It's such an extensive, long topic, and you can stay on it for a long time, but I just wanted to give you the second part of it and wanted to get deeper into different aspects of inflation, talk about price fixing a little bit, and then get into Vladimir Putin and some type of remedy. So it's been good talking to you guys tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a good Sunday. Hope you have a great day off for those that are off work tomorrow. And I hope you have a great rest of your Labor Day weekend. Thank you. God bless. And remember, always, always, always stay vigilant. Thank you.